Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 312, and today's date is March 12th, 2014, and the title of this episode is the Devaluation of the Dollar Unavoidable? Well, we are definitely going to see a dollar devaluation. There is a very high probability that this is going to happen, and I'll explain what I am talking about a little bit later in this report. But let's get into the economic collapse news. We're going to head out to Greece right now, and again, the people of Greece are preparing a march, and it is planned in Athens later today. Civil servants have penciled in another 48-hour strike on March 19th and 20th. Again, we have to understand that the Greek government is looking to get another tranche of loans to help the country out, and for them to receive this, they have to impose austerity on the people, and the people are angry. They're pissed off, and because it makes it harder for them, because you have to remember, the central bankers do not care about the people. They don't care if all of these people don't have jobs, as long as the government pays back the money with interest. And again, how is the government going to do this if they don't have the revenue? And this is the problem with all of this. Now, we understand, especially in the United States, the economy is a complete illusion. They want all eyes looking at the stock market. They don't want anyone looking at the real economy. And of course, whenever there's bad economic news, they blame it on the weather. But when we look and we break it down, and there was a survey done to see if the weather actually affected people's purchasing and how much they spent, and what we see is, no, it really didn't. We see 19% spent less, 27% spent more, and 55% spent pretty much the same. So all this weather talk, because that they're using to show that the economy is not doing well, and because of this bad weather, it might extend into the rest of the year and into the next 2015 and into 2016, because we had, 10 days of snow days, which weren't consecutive, which were all at different times, and it didn't happen at the same time in every single state in the country. It is absolutely ridiculous what they're talking about, and this is starting to prove it. Again, they're saying this because they understand the economy is not doing well, and we understand this because what is happening is people are getting laid off all over the place. Right now in UniCredit, they are planning to cut 8,500 jobs. Why? Because they have doubtful loans on their book worth about 9.3 billion euros. These are people or corporations that are not going to pay back these loans, and this bank is having trouble. But we're seeing this everywhere, and I've talked about this in previous reports, that you are going to see financial institutions here in the United States lay off people. And today, what are we seeing? Well, we are seeing that analysts now expect Goldman Sachs to record its weakest first quarter since 2005. And JP Morgan Chase and Bank of America are forecast to see their lowest revenues since they bought Bear Stearns and Merrill Lynch in 2008. The weakness is expected to be even more severe among European banks such as Deutsche Bank and Credit Suisse. Citigroup and JP Morgan Chase have warned publicly that the fixed income revenues, the engine of most of these investment banks, profits since 2000 will be down by double digits when they report first quarter earnings next month. So right now, 2 of the top 5 fixed income divisions said they expected to respond by cutting, guess what, more jobs. And I've been speaking to people that I have worked with. They moved to different banks, and they're in the very big banks, right, financial institutions, and they are definitely hearing rumors of huge layoffs. And again, we are going to see this happen very, very soon. And this is going to pose a huge problem because already we have these huge retail layoffs and manufacturing layoffs and mortgage layoffs, and now we're moving into the banking financial layoffs. This is going to decimate the economy because the unemployment, as we know, it is completely an illusion. It is not 6.7%. It is between 30 and 37%, of course, depending on the calculation you use. And this number is going to skyrocket. And we don't even have the youth to help out with this situation, because guess why? They're unemployed, and their numbers are even higher than 37% at this time. So again, we have to remember the government wanted to create something to bring in revenue to the government to help out and help pay for all this debt and all these social programs, because they understood that most of the people are not working and they can't tax those people because they don't have jobs, or their jobs have changed and they're not making the same amount of money, and they're making a lot less, and they're not bringing in the same revenue. So they created Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. And again, this is not going well right now. And what has happened is Obama was out at a town hall meeting with Latinos, and he was asking questions. What's wrong with the Affordable Care Act? And they kept on saying it's too expensive. The deductibles are way too high. This is ridiculous. And he said to them, he made a suggestion that maybe some families might be spending too much money on cable television or cell phones, and maybe they should cut back on that and pay for the health insurance. This is what he's telling the American people. It is unbelievable. The health insurance has doubled or tripled for many people, and not just with the premiums, but with the deductibles. Because even if you're paying, let's say it's $100 a month, and you have a $5,000 deductible, you're paying $100 in January all throughout December, January, February, March, $100 each time. It's $1,200 a year. Then you have this $5,000 deductible. I go to the doctor in February. I go to the doctor in March. I go to the doctor in April. I go to the doctor in December. Guess what? I have to pay out of my pocket. The insurance company pays nothing until I reach $5,000. By the end of the year, if I didn't reach it, it resets for the next year, and I go back to zero, and I have to reach $5,000 again. So guess what? This has nothing to do with cell phones. This has nothing to do with cable. This has to do with insurance is not working for the people, because we understand that this is a complete cash grab. Now, we understand that the Obama administration has no clue who is paying for this insurance. Yes, the corporate media is out there saying, oh, we reached 4.2 million enrollees. Yes, oh wow. But when they're asked how many people have actually paid, they cannot give an answer. And most of these people who have been joining are all those people who got their insurance canceled because they had no other choice but to join up to the exchanges. And when they decided to go with the exchanges, they looked out and said, holy moly, this health insurance is expensive. I don't know if we can pay for this at this time. And this is what's happening. And they understand, the Obama administration understands they will not be getting the revenue from Obamacare, because this is what Obamacare was designed for. It was a cash grab. It was intertwined with taxes. It was completely created to bring in revenue. But don't worry, those insurance companies that aren't making money will receive a bailout from the government, because this was written into the law. If people didn't buy the insurance and the insurance companies didn't make money, the government would subsidize the insurance and bail them out. And this is what's happening right now. So what is the Obama administration doing right now to create this revenue? Well, they're harping on climate change. Americans right now are being bombarded with climate change, and they're continually hammering home climate change. But guess what? Most of the American people could care less. What they're really worried about is, how am I going to pay my electric bill? How am I going to put gas in my car? How am I going to feed my children? How am I going to pay my mortgage or rent? And again, they are pushing this forward. They already have legislation is now being pushed that will raise American electricity prices and raise taxes on energy, because they need a way of creating this revenue. And we understand, and they understand, that this economic collapse is coming. There's no way out of this at this time, and they get it. And all they can do right now is divert the attention and try to reduce the amount of rights that the people have, because they don't want to give up their power. And right now they're out there, of course, I've mentioned this many times, that they're trying to remove the Second Amendment, they're trying to remove the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, with spying on the American people. And they've been implementing laws. States have been implementing laws. Obama has the executive orders for gun control. The UN Arms Treaty is signed in the Senate. Dianne Feinstein bill is in the Senate. They're just pending there, waiting for this special event to come along. And what's happening is, in these states that have these draconian gun control laws, they are definitely backfiring on the legislator. What is happening now in Connecticut, there's about 300,000 gun owners that are saying, absolutely not, we are not giving in our weapons. And now what's happening, there is at least 250 law enforcement officers that are now joining them and just disobeying this unconstitutional law that the legislators have created. Again, these people are not listening to the people in their state and the law officers in their state. But again, this is starting to spread now. Other towns, other states that have these draconian laws, that people are starting to respond and say, you know what? I'm not giving up my weapon. And right now, a town in California is doing the same exact thing. Now, we understand that the United States, the central bankers, they're never going to leave Afghanistan. They will never leave. China is there. They have a huge copper mine. China is pouring in billions of US dollars into Afghanistan to build up the infrastructure to help the people mine the copper. And again, China also reported that if the United States leaves, they will help out fighting terrorism in Afghanistan. And right now, General Joseph Dunford, the current commander of the International Security Assistance Force in Afghanistan, said on Wednesday that if the U.S. were to pull all troops under a zero-option plan, the entire security environment of the nation would begin to deteriorate. And of course, what are we going to see? We're going to see more and more terrorists all of a sudden pop up. The United States, the central bankers are going to be out there saying, see, look, we're pulling out troops. Look what's happening. The terrorists are coming back. We need to stay. And they're going to keep pushing Karzai, or the next administration, because Karzai is leaving, to sign the bilateral security agreement, which allows the U.S. troops to go into homes without any type of warrant or anything like that and raid people's homes and continue with the drone attacks to push the actual people of Afghanistan back, because these are the people of Afghanistan who actually want their country back. And again, United States, the central bankers are in there because they're protecting the poppy fields, which they use to create opium, which they sell on the black market in the United States, in Russia, and China, to pay for their covert operations. And we all understand this at this time. And we also understand that Syria and Iran right now are dealing with Russia. They are making agreements. They are building up their infrastructure. And right now, Iran, they decided to create this agreement with Russia to build 2 nuclear power units in Iran. And we have to remember, Iran has never produced a nuclear weapon. The UN Security Council for Atomic Affairs was in the country. They see no evidence whatsoever that there's any type of nuclear program to create nuclear weapons. Again, if we go back 30 years to 1979, the corporate media, the U.S. government, Israel, Saudi Arabia, all these countries have been saying that they are on the brink of creating this weapon of mass destruction, a nuclear weapon, and they're only 3-5 months away, and this has never happened. It's been over 30 years right now, and if they were going to create one, they should have just created it and used it already, because they kept on telling this every year that they're going to do this, and they never have. Now, we understand in Ukraine there is a lot going on at this point. And Ukrainian government that was pretty much put into power. It's a puppet government because they never allowed elections. because they were afraid that they were going to lose those people that are in control of Ukraine right now. Ukrainian government saying, listen, we understand that Russia is in Crimea. We understand that they are your military force. And the Crimean Prime Minister is saying, well, no, that's not true. There are no Russian servicemen in the Republic, local self-defense units whatsoever. These are Crimeans. The self-defense units contain no Russian servicemen, and as of today, the Russian army does not participate in actions to block military units to ensure public order at all. So what they're saying is absolutely false right now. And we understand that the United States is continually pushing their agenda, and we see it all over the news. The corporate media is really pushing that, Russia invaded, they brought in 16,000 troops, and we know for a fact that this is absolutely false. Those troops were already there, they were stationed there, and they have an agreement with Ukraine that they're allowed up to 25,000 troops there, just like the U.S. has troops in bases in other places. They didn't invade. Their troops are there because of the agreements that were created. And right now, since they can't push down to the south and to the east and take over Crimea, the government is left with a couple of options, and those options are sanctions at this point. And again, Obama, the White House, is out there saying we're going to impose sanctions, and we know what type of an effect this is going to have on the United States economy, because Russia has already threatened that they will dump their treasury bonds, they'll dump the dollar, and they'll have other countries like China, India, North Korea do the same. And even the U.S. firms right now are warning Obama that they will suffer huge economic losses should sanctions be put on Russia. Huge corporations like PepsiCo, General Motors, General Electric, among others, have verbally made clear that their interest and involvement in Russia is key to their global strategic plan, and these sanctions cannot go forward or they will destroy the corporations. And again, the White House is stuck at this point of what their next move is going to be. And you have to remember, Putin has not fired a shot, has not brought in any type of military equipment, but the military, the cities, the towns are all moving towards Crimea on their own accord. They are doing it by themselves. And the G7 is out there warning Russia that they will have grave consequences if Crimea separates from Ukraine. And again, the G7, if those of you don't know, is a group consisting of the finance ministers of 7 developed nations, and you can guess who they are: Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and of course the United States. They are the 7 wealthiest developed nations on Earth. And again, they keep putting this on Russia, but it is the Crimean people who are preparing the Declaration of Independence, not Russia, and they're talking to the wrong people. But again, they're putting this out there to demonize Russia at this time, and this is why they're doing it. Now, the chairman of Joint Chiefs, General Dempsey, is out there saying, listen, if these things escalate, and the unrest in Crimea moves forward, the U.S. Army is ready to back up Ukraine and its allies in Europe with military action. And I have assured them that if the treaty obligation is triggered in Europe, we would respond, Dempsey said. But again, we have to think back to August of 2013 when we had the Syrian conflict. Back then, he went on record saying that the U.S. military, if they should attack Syria, it would further commit Washington to a conflict that is not decisive militarily. He said, we can destroy the Syrian Air Force, but we would need boots on the ground, and this would cost billions of dollars. And the fact that Russia backed Syria. Now let's think about this for a second. Back then we had Syria, and Russia would definitely have gotten involved. Today we have Ukraine, with Russia backing Ukraine. Why now is General Dempsey out there saying that he is all in? The only difference right now is that we are running, not we, the U.S. government, the central bankers are running out of time. They realize the dollar is collapsing. They realize that they have major, major problems, and everything that they're trying to do is not working out. And this is why they're in this fix. They tried this back in August of 2013, which allowed them some leeway. Now they are under the gun. The taper has started in Syria. The elections, the mid-2014 elections for President Assad are coming up. And again, to get all of this started, they are trying and doing everything they possibly can at this time. Now, Russia wants to prove to Ukraine and, of course, the central bankers, U.S. government, because the Ukraine government is a puppet regime. They want to prove that Russia is not amassing 220,000 people, 1,800 tanks, and over 400 helicopters. So they're allowing Ukrainian aircraft to fly over Russia to check out and to show them that they're not building up the forces. And again, this goes along with the Open Skies Treaty signed in 1992, and they're going to allow them to do this. At the same time, what is happening is the U.S. is beginning their Navy drills in the Black Sea. U.S. Navy destroyers began joint exercises Wednesday with Romania, Bulgarian warships in the Black Sea, and they are very, very close to Crimea. They're about 130 miles out. The mission was cited by the White House last week as a sign of the United States' commitment to the region amid ongoing turmoil in Ukraine, which also borders the Black Sea, that threatens to split the country apart. So again, we can see what's happening, and because they're having these drills, Russia is also having drills. NATO and the United States have been sending more planes to Poland and to Lithuania. And again, Belarus is also out there saying, listen, we see these more aircrafts coming in. We will offer to host up to an additional 15 Russian aircraft if needed in response to NATO's forces. So again, building up military assets on either side. And again, this is being pushed forward because the end goal of the central bankers in the U.S. government is to create some type of an event to get the war started, to take all eyes off the central bank because they understand the system is coming down. Now, out in Libya, we understand that the North Korea ship was fired upon. There were reports that it was hit, and it seems like it got out into international waters. It was on fire. And again, this oil was sold not using the U.S. dollar. The central bankers, U.S. government, do not like this. And right now, again, as we know, the Prime Minister was relieved of his duties. The Defense Minister was promoted to Prime Minister, and this is why the missile was fired into the ship. Now, the Libyan General National Congress has given the militants controlling Libyan's eastern oil ports 2 weeks to lift the blockade of crude terminals or face fresh military action. If the militants refuse to respect the ultimatum, the decision of the chief of the armed forces will put into action by the Libyan army. Now we have to remember the U.S. government has sent military officers there and other paid mercenaries to train about 5,000 to 8,000 Libyan armed forces to combat the Libyan people who have taken back their country. They have most of their country back. Most of the Libyan parliament is now in a 5-star hotel, and again, as the militia is getting stronger and stronger, the central bankers, the U.S. government, they are losing their grip on Libya at this time. And again, as they continually have these oil tankers come in and they fill up with oil not using the U.S. dollar, more and more countries will say, you know what, I don't need to hold this U.S. dollar. I don't need to hold it in reserves. I'm sending it back to the U.S. And this is where the problem comes in. Now, the West is going to accelerate the war with Syria. Western governments are planning a new push against Syrian President Bashar al-Assad through funding proxy war on the conflict-stricken country, this report suggests. A secret command center in the international operations in Amman is monitoring preparations for the offensive. Now again, this is a repeat of what has happened back in August of 2013 when they had all the military assets come into Jordan. They had the base there in CENTCOM all set up for this strike. This center is staffed by military officials from the U.S., Britain, Israel, and 11 Arab states opposed to Assad. Again, they are running out of options, and they need to push this agenda forward to get all these countries on the U.S. dollar. They need to do this. It said the planned offensive, dubbed Geneva, the actual plan is called Geneva Haran. The United States is also constructing runways for reconnaissance aircraft near the border between Jordan and Syria to help the operation against Syria at this time. So we can see this is going full circle. Here they are again. They had these ridiculous Geneva II talks, which actually went absolutely nowhere because the only thing that was on the agenda was to remove Assad, and the president of Syria wasn't going to say, okay, I remove myself because you said so. We knew that was going to happen. He also knows that he has the support of Russia right behind him, and he also has the support of Iran and China. So why would he step down whatsoever? They have this window of opportunity at this time because if the people of Syria re-elect Assad, it's going to make a very difficult case for the U.S. to say the Assad people think that he should be removed, and this is why they are building all of this up at this time. Now, what are we seeing right now? They are building up the false flag terrorist propaganda like there's no tomorrow. Right now, CIA head is saying that Al-Qaeda's ideology, built on perverse and very corrupt interpretation of the Quran, resonates in many parts of the world and is often fed by political repression, economic disenfranchisement, and lack of education and ignorance. This is coming from CIA Director John Brennan. Now again, they are building this up to let you know that Al-Qaeda is out there and they are ready to strike. And right now, a British man testifying in the terror trial of Osama bin Laden is reassuring us that shoe bombs are definitely out there, because what he is saying is that he flew on planes over the Middle East and Europe with explosives in his shoe after September 11th, but didn't detonate them because he was saving the bombs for an attack over America. So the propaganda is continually being pushed out on us. And of course, Lindsey Graham, he is out there saying that if Crimea becomes Russia, Iran will get nukes. I don't know how he's putting this together, but he says if the Obama administration allows Putin to annex Crimea by force, threat and intimidation, you are basically encouraging the Iranians to break out with their nuclear program and create a nuclear weapon. I don't know how he's saying this, but again, this is completely ridiculous. One has nothing to do with the other. They are building up the propaganda, and this is their plan to make everyone afraid and to let us know that if they cannot prop up the dollar by going into these countries and taking them over and switching all their natural resources, they will use some type of terrorist attack here in the United States. And right now, the EU Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton is out there saying, these P5+1 talks, I don't know, and there's no guarantee that all sides are going to ever reach any type of deal. So they're already backing out of what is going on, because you have to remember their entire plan is to infiltrate the banks of Iran and put all the natural resources on the U.S. dollar. And this is their plan from the beginning. Now, there is a special ops chief saying, and we've heard this many times, that the Syrian Islamic extremists are completely growing and spreading from Syria. And he's warning that the spillover effect would eventually threaten the American homeland. And we've heard this many times before. The threat is already bleeding over beyond the borders of Syria as we're having spillage into surrounding nations. And I can't give you a date when the homeland is in direct threat, but it's in the not too distant future. Remember from reports that I've done before, the FBI was reporting that these radicalized people are already in the United States, and they're having a tough time tracking them because they're in lone wolf groups and they're not really keeping contact, and and some of them are even bomb makers, and they're having a tough time finding out where they actually are. And this is why CNN has come out with the intel that Syria has been hiding biological weapons, chemical weapons in the Alawite section of Syria, and they're building this entire propaganda full circle here because they understand what is happening and they understand what they have to do to start this war. And again, he went on to say that this whole entire thing will have a cascading effect across the area, which will cascade effect across North Africa, across Southern Europe, and eventually here in the United States. So they're expecting terrorism all across the world because of this at this time. Now, we understand that the U.S. dollar will eventually devalue. We get it. We know that this is going to happen. But what we're seeing all across the globe right now is that Russia is now threatening the U.S. dollar and the Treasury bonds. China is threatening. We see right now that China has already been slowly dumping the dollar as a world reserve currency, using bilateral trade agreements with numerous countries, including Russia, India, Australia, Brazil, Germany, and Japan. Russia will not be alone in decoupling the dollar system. China, the United States' largest foreign creditor, and India have clearly sided with Russia, and they're going to begin dumping the treasuries and the United States dollar and changing up the reserves right now. A total drop of the dollar or U.S. Treasury bonds by Russia and China would send shockwaves through the global market, and we get this. We understand that this will eventually happen. But what's interesting, and some of the people who have been listening to me have sent me articles, and I really thank you, and they've sent me videos, and I've done a little bit of research of what is going on. Someone sent me from the People Forum, Big Mouth, sent me a video about this man who was talking about April, where something will happen, where there's an 85% chance of the dollar devaluing. And I heard this, and I won't use your last name. Stacy sent me something, and I started to put pieces together here, and what I'm seeing is I understand what is happening in April at this time and why this is starting to happen. And this is why I'm talking about the devaluation of the dollar. And right now, United States is out there, and they're using a test of 5 million barrels of crude oil reserve, and they're putting it up for sale. The U.S. Department of Energy will sell up to about 5 million barrels of crude oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and move, it said, was to test the capabilities of the nation's emergency stockpile in a rapidly changing oil market. Just keep that in mind right now. Now, due to the recent dramatic increase in domestic crude oil production, significant changes in the system have occurred. And this is coming from Department spokesman Bill Gibson. And the test sale was needed to appropriately assess the system's capability in the event of a disruption. Now, I've been having this discussion on the People Forum. Now, a lot of people around the world who are not awake or just going about their daily business are thinking, oh, a disruption could mean the Ukrainian war. It could be the war in the Middle East, or, what's happening in Libya that I've heard. Or the people who are awake are thinking, oh, this could be a major event here of a false flag event that could disrupt something, or the refineries with power outages. But they're doing this test in wake of what is happening with the G20 and the IMF. And again, I started putting this together, and I don't have all of it, but I'm going to mention some of it right now. The G20 countries will implement the IMF 2010 reforms without the U.S. if Congress doesn't pass the required legislation by April. It was agreed that in the absence of progress by the United States on the 2010 package by the April meeting of the IMF and G20, that there will be a formulated list of bad options. Now, what these bad options are, I don't know at this time, which will allow to move forward in this matter, excluding the opinions of the United States. the 2010 Code of Reforms Act as the singularity for the economic shift or transition from the dollar to the SDR, will sovereign debt restructuring through the International Monetary Fund. Without the ability for the United States to print this money and continually creating this money, the money and the export of the inflation to other countries, the United States will have to constrict the scope of its international ambitions. In fact, without the reserve currency status, because what they're saying is we are going to shift, if they cannot pass this legislation with their bad option obligations, the United States will lose some of its power in the IMF, in what direction the IMF takes. And again, what's happening is they're trying to attach this bill, this legislation, to the Ukrainian bill. Right now, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee is set to vote on an aid bill for Ukraine on Wednesday, which is today, that includes reforms to the International Monetary Fund pushed by President Obama. They're trying to piggyback on Ukraine's bailout or aid loan bill, and they're trying to hide what is going on. The senators are also trying to put Iran sanctions on this bill, and this bill might not go through. And it has to go through before April, because the U.S. may lose clout at IMF due to this agreement that they had. U.S. lawmakers had been trying to approve this IMF quota reforms that were agreed to in 2010, and they need to do it now before April. And what will happen at this point is that the United States would lose its voting rights, and a lot of these voting rights would be given to developing countries, and they will have a bigger say at the international to the international lender. We're already hearing calls by some to say if the United States doesn't approve the IMF reforms, we should maybe move on without them. But Lou, the Treasury Secretary, told Senate Committee that this is not a good place for the United States to be, because we have to think of the ramifications of this. If the reserve status moves from the U.S. dollar to the SDR because the United States could not meet these bad options, this would put the dollar in a complete implosion point where the dollar would start to devalue quite quickly. Because you have to remember, the dollar is propped up by the oil sales across the country. And we have to see, and we have to realize that they did a test to use some of their reserves. Because what happens if the legislators do not pass this? We would see a cascading effect on the dollar. The dollar would start to devalue. It wouldn't matter what's happening across the world. The dollar would no longer be backed up by the oil sales, and we would have a major problem. So what does this mean in April? Because, I mean, we're really pretty much, 4 weeks away to the middle of April? In my opinion, and I've been doing this, and this is what I've been doing, I would start taking some money out of the bank. And again, it's my opinion. This is what I'm doing. I would start investing in some gold and silver. Because if this does occur, you have to remember they do have the bail-in documents. These weren't created just to have around, to float around. They were actually created for this type of problem. Because when people hear that their money is losing value, people are going to run to the banks to try to get as much as they possibly can. And where are they going to put it? because it's losing value every single day. And this is when you're going to see gold start to shoot up. You're going to see silver start to shoot up. And we have about 4 weeks if they don't do something. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.